Welcome to the Innovating Health podcast. This is your host, Hubert Zaitchik. All right. Welcome to the Innovating Health podcast. My name is Hubert Zaitchik. I run Health Wildcatters. And when I want to have extra fun, then I get to hang out with people like Dave Kopp's here today. So Dave is a longtime friend, mentor, and investor, pretty much anything you can name in the ecosystem on entrepreneurship. Also very involved in healthcare and applications of AI in healthcare, of course. So welcome to our podcast, Dave Kopp's.
Thanks. Glad to be here. It's a lot of fun. Always fun to be with you, Hubert.
Thank you. Thanks for making time. And I know we wanted to talk a little bit about worlds, and what I said to you earlier holds. Probably should start with the world before worlds, as in how you got started, because I know there's many cool stories. Will you just run us through a little bit of how you became so completely unemployable?
Well, I think that's where I always like to start, and my wife kind of came up with that. She claims that I'm unemployable, so I have to start companies. It's like I don't have a choice. I think she's probably right. I think the last time I had a real job was kind of right after college, and I had one real job before I went into entrepreneurship, and it was. I remember they had me take it in. One of those tests, what are those called? The Briggs,
Yeah.
Myers-Briggs.
Yeah.
I remember I took one of those and I came into the interview and the guy said, well, I have good news and bad news. I thought, that's not what you want to hear after you take a test like that. And he said, well, the good news is you're really smart. The bad news is you're unemployable. Like you won't take direction well. And at that point, I hadn't done entrepreneurship yet, but I look back on that going, man, those things are good because I didn't take direction very well. The only job I had, I was always trying to turn into something else, So, but yeah, I think it's that kind of mindset, that curiosity and passions kind of led me to. I've built and sold 2 companies prior to Worlds, and each one's based on machine learning and AI. But I'm definitely driven by curiosity and what's possible. Like I think I'm happiest when I'm testing the boundaries of what's possible, and not just from a technical perspective. I mean, I'm actually even more interested in what's possible for people, and teams. Like how can we take on impossible games, we call them here at Worlds, and that challenge us to establish like a really radical innovation mindset, but also challenge our collective mindset, our culture, to take on things that other people might see as impossible for a small company. Like building that mindset that we can do it. Together we can do anything, and it's not just words. Like we actually think we can. And it's somebody else that's going to have to tell us we can't because we're going for it. And I think part of it is after we sold BrainSpace, and took some time off to wiggle our toes in the sand and invent new pina coladas and stuff like that. We did start looking around, and I think for us, this one started because we thought we found something that was broken. Like computer vision was broken, and AI was mostly still in the back office. And so we kind of thought, what if we could bring AI out of the back office and into the physical world, and give organizations the ability to measure and affect the real world, not just back office stuff, but actually the real world with AI. And so I think the infrastructure was already there with IoT investments. People invested in cameras and sensors and stuff, but all they got was more data. So we thought we could solve some pretty unique problems, and it turned out to be great. I think we have these, again, kind of these things we call impossible games. Like we'll create impossible games. Like that's how you grow startups. Is one of our things. Is you throw out impossible games. An impossible game is something that people don't believe. Like there's a part of their mind that says that can't be done, but let's take it on. And so we like to play impossible games and put a lot of effort behind them, because at the very least, even if you don't win an impossible game, you've learned a lot, right? And because it forces your mind to think differently. If it's not possible, you gotta think differently. And so this one was formed off an impossible game, which was what if we can we make machines that can see and sense the world like people, but at an unimaginable scale? That was the thing we threw out. It's basically what we're doing now. So it's actually worked out pretty well.
Yeah, that's very cool, and we can definitely go down that rabbit hole. I love the learning rabbit hole of failure, which is extremely important. I've run across, and you have too, many times. Even heard of a study recently where that was tested and basically related to deep learning versus superficial learning. So as opposed to. And the real retained learning, and the differences were between, of course, the kids that were just studying all the time, before a test, had the better test results. But the tough teachers that had them fail, or had them teetering on the abyss for a good amount of time, they actually had less good test results at the tests and they got bad reviews from the kids because they didn't like them. But you did the same test a month later or a couple months later, the retention was much higher with those kids because of that learning and failure that engraved learning in a different way. So I thought it was interesting. I think we all believe that way. The tough teachers teach us better, and yet they're on the receiving end of criticism and bad reviews. And so it's kind of, as a kid, you have to figure out, was the bad review based on people just hating the fact that they have to study hard and they kind of fail? It doesn't have to be outright failure, just not good grades. Or is it because that really is an incompetent teacher who just confuses people? And so, but I think that's an important and interesting direction we could go on. And we know each other well enough to know that we're not going down this path these moments, because the podcast will be over.
I will tell you, we have a very unique kind of view on failure, and you know this from talking to me, but we basically have this failure doesn't exist in the world kind of mindset that all there is what happens and what you choose to do next. There's not failure. Failure is a judgment, if there's no failure, then all that's left is iteration. Like there's, you iterate until you reach awesome, right? And so we recast failure as iteration in my companies. We encourage people to take on stuff that they have no idea how to do it, and we're not tying your acceptance or your moving up in the company to your success in that thing. We want you to try really hard to do something that's never been done before.
And you celebrate perceived failure of a project.
What was that?
Yeah, it's Dave, is that AI stuff? You do something, I think you do this, and then something happens as well. Anyway, but right, you celebrate perceived failure or the shutdown of a project. Let's put it this way.
Yeah.
Literally, you celebrate it, right?
Yeah, we've had a parade in the office before when we killed a product. Like it's like literally bring a kazoo tomorrow. And let's kill this thing, and we don't kill it like then everybody's fired. It's like take all the people on that project and put them on the thing that's working, and then that thing goes to the roof. I would even say that my last acquisition, like a BrainSpace, happened because of that. We had two products, and one of them we thought was the future of the company, but it wasn't working, and the other one we didn't see as the future, but it was the one that everybody was liking, and we ended up just taking that team and putting them on this one. And all the really good UX people were over here, so when they came over there, that product just shot off, and I think it led to the acquisition of the company. So,
yeah, I mean, culture, and you speak on that too a lot, is extremely important. It also comes from the top. You set the tone, and you get what you want. That's another thing, and people wouldn't necessarily expect that from someone who's such a deep AI expert. But the most human of traits are being celebrated, appreciated, and emphasized in your very artificial intelligence driven company, right?
Yeah, I kind of distinguish between two things. So it's exactly what you're talking about. Like inside of a company, I have my EA, Melanie. She's been with me for years, and she helps me see things that I don't see, in the company. Like if someone's doing something great, she'll tell me about it if I didn't see it, to make sure I see it. Because I have this theory that it's the difference between acknowledgement and promotion. So promotion, acknowledgement is me looking at you and saying, "Hey, Hubert, that was a great job. Good, thank you for doing that. You rock." Promotion is me we're on a Zoom call with the whole company on every Friday, and me getting on that call and saying, everybody, I want you to know what Hubert just did. It was amazing, and here's how it's going to help the company. Here's why it's making a difference, and it's promoting you to other people. And so I always think as a leader of a startup, especially, you should be thinking about, acknowledgement and promotion. Like when is it appropriate to do one or the other? But always, like you said, always recognizing people for the greatness.
Yeah, no, that's an important learning, and I think too many startups, want to just hear about the money, mechanics, and the truth is, if you build the right culture, now I'm oversimplifying. You do need money, and I always say I need my startups to be comfortable in where they are, and in the basic necessities of life have to be taken care of to their standards. Because mine are the same as somebody who's 21 that just can live in somebody else's basement.
Yeah.
As long as you're comfortable where you are and you feel like you can provide for your family or your loved ones, and at that point, that needs to be taken out of the equation, the basics. But after that, it's not it's not so much the money. It's about
Mhm.
many other factors that play a role, and also your personality as a leader, because some of this is going to weigh heavily on you, and if you don't have the tools to deal with what you perceive as a failure, then you're not going to be a good
Yeah,
leader either. So
that's right.
the leaders need their own set of cheerleaders to keep it up, right? And that's your family and friends and
Yeah,
colleagues very often too.
kind of why I like co-founders too, because my
Mm.
co-founder Chris Rody and I ping off each other all the time, and sometimes I'm off the edge, and he brings me back, and I'll bring him back, and we have this kind of funny thing now that we've done it a couple times. Whenever something gets really bad here at Worlds, we'll look at each other and go, "It's temporary," you know. But if it was my first company, I'd be freaking out, right? But I
Oh,
know we've got good people, and we'll get through it.
well, I mean, I'll definitely people know. I mean, so it is with health podcasters and the first fund I raised. I mean, I didn't have any. Is this like, do I know anyone that has a dime? I didn't even know. So
Yeah,
it all turned out, now looking back, it's all great. But never take it for granted, I think is important. Because
sorry.
the day you take it for granted, like, oh, I'm so great and everyone's gonna want to do this. No, hold on, check your ego at the door. You're an entrepreneur.
Yeah,
And that's the way I regard our shop as well. But I don't have to worry about the things that are beyond my control. As long as I do everything that I can do and control, the
that's right.
rest is going to work its way out. And if it doesn't work its way out, depending on your point of view, in my case, it's like, okay, that's no, a higher power is telling me something. Move on and do something else. It's just you run your course. And in my case, it's I believe in God, and so whatever it may be for other people, it's good to take it with a grain of salt and say, well, this is just like you said, a new beginning or a new direction. That's not something that has to stop you at all.
That's right.
Well, I'm not a very good moderator here. Anyway, can we talk a little bit about AI though? Because very likely people will see this podcast, and now we're 15 minutes into it, and
Yeah.
we've talked about, I think, the most important parts of running a startup. But tell me a little bit of what you're seeing in AI and healthcare, and what excites you.
Yeah.
Your vision of where we get to. There's lots of doomsday scenarios, of course, and frankly, I'm just waiting for my droid. I want my droid. I know Elon's working on it. I want my droid that just does my chores, and literally, and then, but so much more. What else is out there for
Yeah.
us?
I think, the first thing we should do is kind of appreciate what just happened, like the last 15 months. I think we kind of blow over it because we look at like ChatGPT like the next Google kind of thing, and it's just not at all what it is. Like um, the last 15 months and now it's been transformative, and it's giving us a peek at a potential future that looks very different from today. So like you think about what happened with ChatGPT and Claude and all those things and Llama and essentially we took the world's written information, like 46 terabytes, extracted and compressed the knowledge of those documents down to a 175 gigabyte file. 46 terabytes. We extracted not the words, not the sentences, not the language, like Google indexes words and things like that. We didn't do that. We indexed the context, the compressed context of those documents, and it fits on a 175 gigabyte file. Like you can put it on your phone, right? That to me is amazing, right? So the compression of context is the new intelligence, right? So we're exiting the big data era and we're entering into big compute. So the future will be a lot less about searching everything and more about generating anything. And so in big data, the power was about storing and accessing data. Companies like Google and Facebook like that have made a mint off of that. In big data, the power is in computation. So you're consumers of big data, consumers of information in big data. You're creators of information in the generative world. And then visual interfaces control or access technology and big data. And you're typing things in search boxes, and interfaces are nothing in big compute. Now it's about human expression, right? English is the new coding language, and AI was for developers in the big data, and now AI is mainstream. It's been democratized. Everybody has access to it. So these are huge changes. So it's not going to slow down. We're seeing a 10x increase in compute every 6 months. To
Hmm.
put that in perspective, every 20x improvement leads to a million-fold improvement over human intelligence. Think about that. Claude, the Claude.ai, those guys, I think it was rated 101 IQ. Genius is 140. We'll probably be there in a year, right? So you'll have a genius AIs with these LLMs. We have to change the Turing test because we've already passed the Turing test. Now we have to do some different things. But I think the things you can look forward to, there's a couple of things. So one, obviously the other big change is that these AIs are learning more like children. Like we used to teach AIs what to learn and how to learn, and now we don't do that. We just point them at data and turn on the algorithm and let it go learn. But then it does something really interesting, right? So then we have this thing we call RLHF, reinforcement learning human feedback, where now we, the people, are training the AI. So we're the parents, we're raising the AI. And so I don't know if you remember right after ChatGPT launched and everyone started pinging it and playing with it, it actually got worse. I'm not sure if that's a great statement about people, but they fixed it somehow. Yeah, but so now they're learning from experience, right? So AIs are learning from experience, and so by interacting with us, so are we going to be good mentors, right? That's
Mm.
something to think about. But I think our expectations were really off. Like building close to human intelligence is a lot easier than we thought. What we didn't expect is just how good a model could be trained only on text. Like, what's next is going to be the real world, right? Jan LeCun said it best. He was at the Davos meeting and he said, we've run out of text, right? So these large language models are out of text. So what do? We have to expand how AI learns. You don't just learn from images and text. Now you have to be able to experience the world. This is where what we're doing at Worlds comes in. We're helping AIs extend beyond text and images to learn into learning from observing and experiencing the world through the cameras and sensors that we have all over the world. And that's what we're doing. We're helping AI kind of learn and experience by observing the world. But I think, we're not going to see a slowdown. Everyone says this year was incredible. We can't keep doing that. Well, guess what? We're going to keep doing that every year, at least for the next 10 years. So every year we're going to be looking at each other going, holy crap, that was amazing. But that's not going to happen again. And it's going to happen again for 10 years at least till 2030, maybe beyond that. So but I think the vast amount of data, the incredible compute we have now, a radical increase in the number of parameters in an LLM. I think I just heard yesterday that the Llama 3 that just came out has 15 trillion tokens. So a token is like words or phrases or things like that. It's built from 15 trillion tokens. It's unbelievable, right? We spent more on Llama 3 than we spent getting people to the moon. So building one large language model, they spent more than they did putting people on the moon. So I think we're just in
Wow.
for a ride. It's going to be incredible. The ride forward is going to be incredible. And it's going to
That,
change the world.
yeah, no, that's unbelievable. And I guess it wouldn't help to have discover old scrolls and texts and feed them in there because I think most of that's going to be mayhem and condemnation and racism. The history of the world. So be
Yeah,
careful with the historic text here, indiscriminately feeding it all that. And I agree with you on humans got on there and started spewing awful things, and the models got worse. One of the simpler things that happened along the way was, ChatGPT making things up along the way. So instead of acknowledging it doesn't know something, it just invents things that are blatantly wrong. And I've tested that myself, and it was absolutely wrong. And that, of course, introduces a layer that's very human, lying. It's not good on your resume or for business relationships to just simply say, here are
yeah,
5 facts about me, the two best ones I just made
yeah,
up. Do you have an idea of how I mean, this is a very simple, I mean, especially if you fast forward 24 months, everything's going to be so much more sophisticated. How that will be harnessed for public use, because what it did in my case, yeah, it just basically just made stuff up. And if
yeah,
somebody had researched my resume, they would have like literally come up with fake stuff,
yeah,
completely unfounded. Now I did it on myself, so I knew it wasn't true. But
yeah,
then it covered for its mistakes, and then it covered for its mistakes again, both times. So
yeah.
very unique. And how, I mean, this is at the core of people's worries, right? Where does that go, and how is that being checked? Or
Yeah, I think So first of all, the hallucination stuff, I think we'll be done with that in a year. So I think we're pretty close to that. And that's been one of the things holding it back from healthcare, right? Because you can't have hallucinations in healthcare, right? It's okay in a marketing document, but not in healthcare.
Right.
So that's been one of the things holding it back. I do think we're going to be through that kind of in But what's interesting is it's funny because hallucinations, what that is it's the AI being creative, and
Right.
so you don't want to kill it, right? You want it to be
Right.
creative because AIs are creative. We thought that was the last bastion of
Mm.
and so like our AIs can be creative. Yes, they can be creative. We're already seeing that. In fact, there's kind of an interesting thing that happens every time we 10x the compute and throw it at throw intelligence that we never anticipated. Like it's learning in ways and it's learning about things that we never anticipated. And so that's why this increase in compute, coupled with data is going to be just we have no idea. You could take the same data set today and throw a lot more compute at it and learn totally different things. Because we're not just indexing words anymore. We're indexing the context and giving it by more and more parameters, more and more tokens. We're giving it this ability to be really creative in how it learns and get more and more human-like. Although I'm a person that does not like our anthropomorphizing of AI, trying to make it like people. When you think about what's really happening, is we are building a non-biological intelligence. I don't even like the word AI anymore.
Yeah.
It's not artificial intelligence. What we're building is a new intelligence. We're building a non-biological intelligence. There will be aliens on Earth, but it's not coming from another planet. We're going to build it right here. And we need to respect it for what it is. It's a non-biological intelligence. It learns differently from us. It'll do some things way better than us, and some things it won't do as well as us. So we have to develop these ways of testing because I think this is where it gets, like you said, people are starting to worry about it, right? So we have these things coming out called red teaming models. A red teaming model is basically you need to study AIs in the wild and push them to be evil and sexist and racist, things like that. And then you work with them and fix them, right? And we've got to be more aggressive in that. I do think it's interesting how we Congress and people like that, when they get in touch, they do stupid things, right? They say, oh, it must be explainable AI. Everyone has to have explainable AI. And
Mhm.
all I can think is saying, dude, we passed that a long time ago. We don't know how these things are learning right now. We have no idea. So I think a new form of anthropology will emerge, and it'll be about studying AI in the wild and understanding how these different algorithms and different sets of data are producing different results in the world. You study it just like you study a culture or people.
Well, I mean, by definition, it should be predictably smarter than all humanity in a reasonable amount of time, which
Yeah,
then, of course, brings out all the sci-fi movie stuff of control, and it's real. It's real when it possesses will and wisdom and its own sense of self-preservation. It
yeah.
will do things, especially. I mean, none of what you've seen on sci-fi movies is out of the realm of the possible.
I think
Well, I mean, I can say none because I haven't seen all the
yeah,
movies, but there's a lot of it is entirely conceivable at this point.
we like to imagine AI as evil. I'm not one of those that thinks that's going to be the natural state of AI.
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
think it is.
No, it would be the militarized versions that go rogue. I mean, the ones
Yeah,
in training
yeah.
to.
I think the things like if you ask me, first of all, if you ask anyone that knows a bit about AI, if they're worried and they say no, they're lying to you. There are things we need to be concerned about, and I think thing I'm watching right now is what we're kind of calling in the industry is recursive self-improvement. Like AI is updating and improving their own code, and so like in a closed loop, like defining its own goals, acquiring its own resources, updating its code with respect to a specific objective, right? So we're because when you think about it, we license nuclear. If you were to be a nuclear developer, you had to be licensed, right? And
Hmm.
you know, but now it's like an AI developer. So what's the difference between AI and nuclear weapons? I was asked that at a conference once, and my immediate response was nuclear weapons can't create more nuclear weapons.
Oh, great! Way to make friends and calm the
Yeah,
nerves.
but we do need regulation on that level
Mhm.
internationally, and I think the problem is we've created this race. There's an arms race going on right now with AI, and and anytime you have a race, things get thrown to the side, caution gets thrown to the wind, and we just go, 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 go. And that's not what we need to be doing right now. We need to pay attention to what's happening. The time to think about how we control this stuff is now, not
Mhm.
after it goes rogue, right? And
Yeah.
so, yeah,
Hmm.
so it's going to be interesting. I think you're talking about medical and biology. I mean, synthetic biology is going to be incredible. I think the two areas that'll be transformed the most with AI are going to be education and biology. I actually think we're going to create new biology and create new physics like that we've never seen before, and in 20 years time, like desktop synthesizers will be cheap, right? The ability to engineer new synthetic compounds will be democratized. And so what happens when that happens, right? So I don't know, it's going to be interesting, right?
It will be. And to stay on the topic of healthcare, and we're gonna close here in a couple minutes, but just kind of on the healthcare side, things that you're most excited about in that direction. I mean, I guess you said synthetic biology just now. So, but
Well,
any
yeah.
particular areas where you think that coming to use sooner than in others?
Yeah, I think because in medicine, data is really important, right? And so there's a lot of data. Hope we unlock that data because the things that we can learn will be incredible. I think we are going to see the emergence of neural enterprises, and that could be also like a neural institution, like a medical institution. And
Mm,
what that means is like you've heard about companies for a long time talk about being data centric, right? Oh, we're data centric or we're data, empowered by data. The difference between that and what I'm talking about is it's going from data centric organizations to adaptive and autonomous organizations, so like data plus AI has a seat at the table, as my partner likes to say, so the characteristics of a neural organization would be continuous learning and adaptability. So your AI models are continuously learning over time as new data enters the system. Imagine that in healthcare. You could come to, cures and things so quickly if that happened. And then intelligent decision making. So I believe all doctors will be augmented by AI and helping them make decisions because AI learns from past outcomes and it can learn way better than a human. We learn at 60 cycles a minute, and I think AI is a trillion, and so there's no reason not to use AI. But in automating complex tasks and personalization at scale, like personalized medicine, like my body, it's not going to be that long. I think it's within 10 years where you'll almost be able, because now that English is a new programming language, be able to have a conversation with your body. Imagine that, like, just being able to ask your body questions and have it come back and tell you things, like that's going to happen. That's not a pie in the
wow.
sky thing. So it's going to get interesting. I think, and again, on a concerning level is, what if we do create a new biology, or a new math, that we don't know. It's going to get kind of interesting, but
Well, and that we have no chance of ever understanding or learning at that level
mhm,
because that'll
exactly.
continue to increase in intelligence, and it'll just literally be stuff that we're not able to. So we're gonna have to find the symbiotic way, like you said, in physicians that might
Hmm.
can. I mean, it's well known that you would want to go with a surgeon who's done
Hmm.
know how many surgeries, but several years, at least 5, 10 years out of med school or out of training is what I would say 10, because then he or she has and somebody who's done that very same surgery dozens, if not hundreds of times, and that can be absolutely short circuited in the future with all the red flags and getting all the experience and wisdom out of thousands of surgeries into one training scenario or a co-pilot
Yeah.
that assists you on your surgery, and that surgery may even be performed by a Da Vinci robot that is robotic, so you don't even touch it. But once again, it can gain a lot with this type of assistance and make that cycle faster for humans as well on the learning side.
I mean, think
So
about being a doctor, right? Augmented by AI, right? So 700 papers a day or something like that, or maybe it's more than that, a few thousand papers written every day. It's impossible for any doctor to
yep.
keep up with new technology. But imagine the physical side of that, like you said, if so we had AIs learning from every surgery, but the difference between AIs and people are that, like, I don't find you very often, Hubert, and get to share stuff with you.
Right.
AIs share with other AIs all the time. This transfer learning is a natural part of its evolution. So as more surgeries happen and more was learned, that collective intelligence of that just grows and grows and grows and exponentially gets better, so things become possible that were never possible before in very short periods of time. So It's pretty crazy.
That is crazy. I think it's because you're crazy. We're gonna shut this down real fast
You gotta
before
be
this
a little
gets
bit
out
to
of
do
hand.
startups.
I know you got your fair share of that dose there. I got a little bit of it too,
That's right.
but I do think I want to be respectful of our time. It's always, of course, a tremendous pleasure to speak with you. Appreciate your support for the entrepreneurial community in Dallas, all over the world. That I've seen your generosity in giving of your time, conferences and students and startup entrepreneurs, and it's so important for them to see your example and leadership in that, because it's not when you're there that you start giving. It's as you go along, as you're a couple steps ahead.
Yeah, that's right.
And you've lived by that mantra all your life, and many entrepreneurs I've known have benefited from that. And so, really appreciate you and all you do, and also your time today. I'll leave you with the final words if you have any additional wisdom.
Well, hearing what you just said, I kind of it takes me back to my mom, because I'm one of those really lucky people that had an incredible parents. But my mom, because I grew up epileptic, and I had my first seizure, my fourth birthday party, and my mom was this person that never let me use that as a crutch. Like I was on phenobarbital, which is a downer, and
Mm.
back then that was the best medication you gave people. Now it's what you give my dog when he has epilepsy, but. She would, even though she knew I was on a downer, she'd get every morning, wake up and say, "You got to get up. Everybody else is getting up. You got to get up." And it wasn't for years later till I appreciated that, and that she was just a stand for my greatness, and that she wouldn't let me use that real thing as an excuse, and so I kind of carry that along. I try to, as much as I can, like to try to be my mom with other people, like who can I be such that this person is great? So I have an expectation of greatness with every person I meet. And the way I look at people is not for who they are today, but who they could be if I stood for their greatness. And so that all comes from my mom. But I think I don't know. I just that's something I take into the world, and hopefully it spreads around, and other people do the same thing, and we all help each other. So
You do. You spread a lot of joy, and your example is a great one, and we're grateful also for your mentorship as a Health Wildcatters mentor. It comes from the heart in our case too. And when I have Dave Cobbs meeting our 10 startups for an evening, of just shooting the breeze and having a whatever dinner he prefers that we ordered, then it becomes real for our entrepreneurs too. This is a very special time for them to get to spend and ask any questions they want and see it. And it still is that relatability of the entrepreneur that is an aspiration for most. And when I'm here, I want them to see people like you that are giving and are successful. Appreciate you. So with that, thank you for being here as always, and I hope to see you soon in real life,
IRL.
in person. And thank you for joining us today for this podcast. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Innovating Health podcast. Be sure to follow, give us 5 stars, and subscribe to stay updated to the latest cutting-edge innovations and revolutionary ideas shaping the future of healthcare.